So thank you everybody for coming tonight. This is the Portland Design Week edition of the Hand-Eye Supply Curiosity Club. Thank you all for attending. We are your hosts this evening. I'm Tobias, and this is Will.
As attendees of the Hand-Eye Supply Curiosity Club, you're all now members, provided you adhere to our philosophy.
Ex Curiositas Scientia.
We admit that it is impossible to know everything about anything, and thus we remain perpetually novice. We admit that it is impossible to know everything about anything, and thus we remain perpetually curious and perpetually novice.
This is our flag and our mascot, Franklin. We've been doing this for 4 years. This is our flag and our mascot, Franklin. The lightning bolt represents the receipt of knowledge, the enlightenment of illumination, the resonance of truths understood. It awakens us and excites us and makes us hungry for more. So for this special edition of the Curiosity Club, we brought together a few of our favorite alumni to share tales of tribulation and triumph from their personal, career, and creative paths. This year's focus is the moments of realization that an individual has arrived on their chosen path and heard their calling, or the moment they've come to realize that there's several rungs up a ladder they didn't want to climb. Each speaker will give a brief presentation on their specific journeys, and we'll follow up with a question and answer discussion. I have a couple questions so that you guys don't have to feel pressured to ask questions right away. And now I'd like to give a warm Curiosity Club welcome to our panel. We have Dee Williams from Portland Alternative Dwellings. Nico Cortellis from Plaza Magazine and Philatelic Atrocities. Dave Selden here from 33 Books. Niall McGoey from Hovercraft Amplifiers. And Kate Bingaman-Burt. And now I'll turn the floor over to them.
Ouch. Thanks, Tobias. Hi, everyone. I'm going first, and I'm going to try to go really quickly, because I'm going to try, but that's my name, Kate Bingaman-Burt, and I am a professor of graphic design at Portland State University, and I'm also an illustrator, and I also do a lot of work about consumption, and I also organize a lot of stuff. And so, let's go to the next slide. There we go. That's some stuff from PSU. One of the things that's really important to me at PSU is creating community and creating spaces for conversation and creating, again, just these areas where education and excitement can flourish. Next. I love this. This is great. This is some of my, when I'm not teaching at PSU, I am doing lots of work for clients through illustration, and I do this a lot of work at night, et cetera, et cetera. Next. See, this is good. I'm going pretty quickly. This is excellent. And then these are some of my projects about consumption. I like to create rule-based situations that I follow. I just finished a daily drawing project where I drew something that I purchased every single day for 8 years. And then I also make stuff about the things that we buy. And so as we were tasked with the question of what were some of the important moments that happened in our creative development that led us to where we are. I honestly don't know where I'm at right now, because I really kind of go along the line of like, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm doing it anyway. And I do a lot of like making and thinking at the same time, not a lot of thinking and making, but I went through a lot of my files. I'm a pack rat. Okay, and I love ephemera and paper, and one of the very first things, I love tangible things, tangible objects and stories, and I discovered that I actually have kept a lot of my love letters from, but I had one boyfriend in particular that would type all of his letters to me, and this is when I was in, I don't know, I think I was in 6th grade, and hi, I just want to say I'm glad we're going together. If you tried calling me at 6, my mom was on the phone. And so just like it goes on, but I was more enamored with the fact that he typed his letters out to me. And then I broke up with him or whatever. But I was able to get my mom to get me a typewriter. And that kind of started me creating my own little publications and just again, the power of publishing was made evident through this simple gift of a typewriter from my mom. And it was spurned by the fact that Nathan Shirk wrote a love letter to me when I was in 6th grade. And I was like, a typewriter? I want a typewriter. So anyway, that was very, very important. These are so funny too. This is, I love you. WBS, right back soon. Love you always. And then he goes, well, I guess I'll let you go now. And it's great. So anyway, I have piles of just like letters and correspondence that I've kept over the years. And it's again, but this is the one I remember being like, I want a typewriter.
Mm-hmm.
And
What'd you get?
What did I get?
Yeah, what kind?
I don't remember. It was an electric typewriter. It was like a new one. So this was probably like in the late 80s or something like that. And I just like started writing stories and creating publications, and it was just great. Another pivotal moment in my life was when I was in college. I was a mass communications major, and I thought that I was going to be a broadcast journalist. I thought I was going to write for TV and radio. I hated it, and I burned the book. And I had a ceremony in a field. I had a ceremony in a field with my friend Zach Schomburg. He was also a very disgruntled mass communications major. We burned our books in solidarity and became English majors. And I remember that was the moment where I decided that I had control over my education, because I had just thought at that point, well, I liked writing and I was just gonna do this, and I was kind of going along the path of like, this is what I do. But at that moment, that kind of empowering feeling of like, wait, I can drop this stupid major and do the thing that I want to do. That's huge. And that's also something that I really tried to implement in my students at PSU too, where you can be an active participant in your education. You can decide the things that you want to do. Be an active participant in your life. And so, burning this book, I keep this pinned in every single office that I've ever inhabited since, my early 20s. And it's one of my most cherished objects, okay? Woo! I know, so that's, yeah, definitely. And then this was my very first graphic design project. It's a large, oversized paper mache avocado. Okay? And we were supposed to just like analyze a fruit 9 different ways. And I decided that I was going to, instead of doing the assignment, I decided it was going to be more fun to paper mache a giant avocado, which is my fruit, which is a fruit, by the way. I don't know if you knew that. An avocado is a fruit, not a vegetable. So I decided it was going to be way more fun to have my friend Tony dress up in an avocado costume and educate people about avocados. But in a very fun, and he had balloons, he wore tights. People got really excited about this avocado, which, I get excited about avocados right now because avocados are the best. But this was where I realized that the way that I want to do design work, I want design to engage with people. I want to have conversations with people. I don't want it just to be a study. I want to involve people and community. And that led to, this is my last thing, I'm going very quick. That led to, I have other things in here too, but anyway, that led to me organizing this series where I was like, I want to make things happen. I want to involve community. And I was 19. I'm like, let's get all like the artists together and the writers together, and let's make our own events and not wait for these events to happen. So this is the very first park shelter I've ever reserved, and I saved the Parks and Recs slip. This is from May 6th, 1999. And that was the first event I ever organized. And that was very empowering for me to be like, you can make events happen. And so yeah, these are all very, 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 very important to where I am and how I make today, because it involves people, it involves stories, and it also involves kind of like making the path that you want to walk upon. So anyway, thank you for indulging me on that.
Now who gets to follow that?
It's you.
I lost the dice roll. I'm Dave. I'm not nearly as entertaining as Kate is. Those are my books. I make little tasting notebooks like so. For beer, wine, whiskey, cheese, chocolate, all sorts of different things.
All good food groups.
I have very expensive taste in almost anything you can come up with. Next slide, please. Ding. I hail from the great state of Iowa. Oh, there's a weird animation or something.
Iowa.
That's Iowa. That's Iowa. Yeah. You can see it right here. That's the center of the Iowa flag here. This actually is relevant. It says, "Our liberties we prize, and our rights we will maintain." That's kind of my own personal motto, as well as the official motto of the state of Iowa. I lived there until I graduated from college and worked for a little bit, and moved here. And next slide, please. I worked in advertising, and specifically interactive stuff for, 15 years or so, which was pretty interesting work. I really enjoyed it, but it was kind of corporate at the end of the day, and I sort of grew tired of, despite working on some really cool stuff, working on other people's stuff, and kind of started to think about making something for myself, and that's kind of where we're going to end up. Next slide. Because I was in interactive, I set up a blog one day just because I thought this new WordPress thing was something I ought to know a little bit about, and I got a free domain name, and I was kind of into homebrewing at the time, and I invented BS Brewing, which is a now extinct group of my friends who homebrew. We used to homebrew together, and that was our bsbrewing.com. Anyway, it became like a thing, and we started getting invited to all these weird media events where people would ask us to come and drink their beer for free. We got to go on road trips to Astoria, and they would put us up in a nice hotel and drive us around and give us beer to drink. It was kind of amazing, actually. I was like, wow, this is pretty neat. Next slide, please. But the real problem opportunity happened at the Great American Beer Festival, which just happened in Denver about a week ago, last weekend. And they have over 2,300 beers available on tap at that one event, which is a little bit more than most people can remember tasting. Despite my best efforts, I remembered very few of them. So next slide, please. I came back to Portland and I was like, man, I should come up with some cool way to remember the beers you try. So I designed this app, and I met with a whole bunch of people, including some people that kind of wanted to invest in it, but I got really tired of it. It was just pixels, and I was kind of done with interactive. So next slide. I heard this awesome talk by Laura Whipple, who many of you probably know. She runs a cool company with her husband, Austin, called Pinball Publishing. They produce these little things called Scout books, and she's like, you can make these cool little books, and it's pretty cheap. And,
Is that your
that
impression?
was my
of
Laura impression. I hope she enjoys it. Love you, Laura.
I was like, what are you doing?
We're pals. Next slide. And so that's when I came up with this little book. So it's kind of like an app, but it's a book. And I really like writing things down a lot more than I like typing them into a phone or a computer, despite my extensive technical background. And that's kind of what this thing is. So the idea is you can kind of quickly take notes on the beers you try and so on. And I was really stressed out about it, and I thought I might never get rid of the first 1,000 that I ordered, which sounded like a whole lot, and it still is kind of a lot of books. But it has turned into basically my job, and now, next slide, I have 10 different books, and I'm actually about to release my 11th at the end of this month, which is champagnes, and it is awesome. I drank a lot of champagne this summer. And a lot of scotch. As I said before, I have super expensive taste in all of these things now, and yeah, that's what I do. So I think that's it. Maybe there's one more. Oh, and I also have these cool maps, which I didn't bring, but that's kind of my newest thing too. They're like the books, but bigger. The idea is you would try a beer from every state, and then next slide, and then I have a version for Scotch, where you would try a Scotch from every major Scotch producing region in Scotland, and similarly wine in France. So yeah, and that's kind of my take on this. I want to know whose band that is.
I know, but I've seen that band too.
Yeah.
I know that band. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It has been Instagrammed so often.
Really?
I'm like, whose band is that?
It's internet famous band. Hashtag. Yeah. That's me.
Excellent.
Can you easier because you don't have to follow Kate.
No, it's worse having the presentations whatsoever. It's fantastic. So I'm Namagahi. I do vacuum tube guitar amplifiers, and kind of how I got there was kind of a long, meandering path, and kind of the thematic thing with this is finding yourself on certain ladders and all that sort of thing. It actually took me quite a while to kind of, I guess, find my dream job, and it wasn't anything that was out there. I had to end up making it. I started out in the tech industry fresh out of college. Back when this will have a point. I had ended up coming up with about 3 thematic constants in what I was doing. The first one was you're right out of college, you get your first real job, you're not wearing a name tag or a uniform anymore, and you're after money. And the tech industry was full of money. You could make fantastic amounts of it. You could buy all kinds of cool toys, but ultimately it was really unsatisfying. But the money part was cool, so that was kind of something I kind of stuck in my head, like, well, having money's kind of cool. I moved various places from down in Seattle down to the Bay Area, and then I got stuck into playing in bands and music. And that was a lot of fun. I got to meet lots of new people. I got to go on tours. I got to do all kinds of amazing projects and live kind of this, razor's edge lifestyle of just constantly go, get in a tour band, go make some amazing shows or record some albums, whatnot. Fun was another thing that was like, I like having fun. Fun is good. That's another one. It gets stuck on there.
So right now we have money and we have fun.
Money and fun.
Money and fun.
Got it.
And then the third one that really came up to me was when I moved to LA, and I started working on art department and set dressing and props and all these other groovy little things that were artistically really cool, and I learned a lot about working with my hands and shooting things for camera and making things light correctly and just sort of the aesthetic parts of it. And it didn't pay shit. It wasn't fun. The hours were terrible, but man, we made some really beautiful things happen. And at the time, I was also still doing music, but more for myself. So that was my exposure to the art ideal. And so everything kind of, went into a blender for a few years. I ended up back in Portland and, kind of diving deep there when you get one of those extraordinarily dissatisfying times at your day job that's paying the money part. And I started kind of distilling down, like, well, these are the thematic things that I kept seeing over and over and over again that I really enjoyed. And what am I really, I kind of had to dive deep and go introspective for quite a while. And this is not something that popped out of my head right away. It's kind of over the course of it's like sweeping away little bits of sand until you finally get to the message underneath it, and who knows what it says. But anyhow, the 2 things I really was after in my life were contentment and satisfaction. So those 3 ideals, art, fun, money, those were the things that I realized really hit the high spots in my life, and those were the things that I was really after. I could kind of take those and kind of overlay them in various states in my life, or various jobs, or various activities, or whatever. That is it 1 out of 3? Is it 2 out of 3? 1 out of 3 is easy. You can make money. Having fun, totally cool. You can go to the park, play sports with your friends, go to a movie. That's lots of fun, but you're not making any money at it. Maybe there's some art, but this is more about your vocation, what you want to do. And I started doing these guitar amplifiers, and I didn't want to do it like everybody else. I wanted to have high artistic content, satisfaction. I wanted to build in some of these ideals into what I did. The notion that I'm making essentially a fundamental tool, and again, I had to dive way down deep and go, why are people using these things? They're using them for satisfaction, fun. They're using them to make art. What I make isn't the art. It isn't a painting. It isn't a sculpture. It's actually being used every time. So I'm assisting, becoming a vessel or a tool for somebody to actually make art. And if I can sell these and actually make money and keep the lights on and pay a few people to help me, fantastic. And I suddenly realized I am doing my 3 out of 3. I got the art, I got the fun, I got the money. And the fantastic thing about, for me, distilling down those 3 ideals is, anytime there's any sort of business decision, do I want to do something, do I not want to do something, I can go back to those 3 things and go, does it have those 3 things? If it doesn't, then it definitely bears a much closer examination of what's going on and the why, and it better have a lot of at least 1 or 2 of those things in order for me to even bother with it, which is fantastic. There was an blog article or whatever by Derek Sivers a while back that was called "Fuck No" or "Fuck Yes" or "No." Sorry about that juxtaposed, but that also helped because when I'm going through, do I do this? Do I make this? Do I devote my time and energy to this? I'm looking for that "fuck yes" moment, and it's got to have that. So that's kind of how I know I'm on the right path, the right ladder, and I can go way back and go, am I getting a contentment and satisfaction out of it? And I am. And everything I drive, my work environment, how I work with my employees, everybody else, it's creating and fostering that environment in order to kind of forward those ideals and kind of perpetuate them. Kind of the Photoshop cut and paste thing. Take something, keep going and pass it along, and hopefully have it keep continuing along to the next person. So the cool thing is I get to make this is
Oh, it's a reveal.
Oh wow! Stuff like this.
That's badass.
Yeah.
This is made out of recycled plywood. These are wine corks.
Yeah.
Reclaimed tin. There's recycled vintage optics, hand wrapped leather. There's mouse embryos.
Oh my god.
Science on there, and this is a vacuum tube amplifier that and it's a unique circuit. This is a unique one-off thing, kind of like artwork, This is something that somebody will be able to use as a tool and continue to make their own art and craft. And every time they look at this, they're going to get inspired and say, this is going to be really fun. It's like twisting a key on a really amazing car or getting into a roller coaster. I want to make something amazing, so this hopefully is a vessel or a tool for that. This is the kind of stuff I get to do. So
That's great.
That's rad. I love that. My name's Nico. I'm a creative director, or at least that's what I tell people I am, because it's kind of complicated to go much deeper than that. I actually started in graphic design, so I've been a graphic designer and still am. Then I sort of migrated into advertising, similar to what you did, and worked as an art director and at Wieden & Kennedy for quite a while before moving to New York and advancing there into sort of creative director position, ECD, EVP, all those alphabet letters. Ultimately became kind of meaningless and soulless. I also do a little directing, some sort of documentary filmmaking, that kind of thing. Have an artistic practice on the side. I do some copywriting, some sort of scripts and things for television. And finally, I'm also an educator. I love to teach. So it's a very sort of similar to what you've probably been hearing already. It's a bit of a meandering path. I think some people might say it's sort of being jack of all trades, master of none. And I wouldn't dispute that. However, I think there's probably a slightly more enlightened view now that would say he has a hybrid practice. And I think Portland in particular is very conducive to that. I've spent my entire life living either in New York, at the East Coast, or here, so I've bounced back and forth a couple of times, and I think that it is probably a place that's conducive to these kinds of creative exploration. I was very fortunate to have a couple of really good mentors early on, and I think the most meaningful things in my career thus far have kind of happened in a meandering way. I was trying to think this afternoon about what my career path would look like compared to others, which I just imagine you guys have like these, fully formed early on and just like went in a straight line. And I was like, my career path I think it's a maze. As if you were to map it out.
Like a corn maze?
Yeah, like a corn maze.
Get it seasonally, right?
Yeah, exactly. Seasonally, my career path is more like a corn maze. So I'd like pursue something with lots of rigor, lots of passion, lots of energy, go in a straight line as fast as I can, as far as I can, and then kind of hit a wall and either like fall down or ricochet off into another direction. So I think that for me, it's been sort of one thing kind of leading to another. I never thought I was going to work in advertising when I went to school for design, and did, and loved it. I wanted to learn a lot about it. I wanted to make commercials, and did that, and then realized it was sort of soulless, and was like, I hate this. It was a weird, it's a short anecdote, but an interesting one. I had corner office on the 41st floor of Manhattan overlooking the United Nations. Beautiful, making bank, Prada suit, traveling, all this kind of stuff. And people who've worked in the business will know that as you go up the ladder, you do less of what got you there. So while at the beginning I was making things and having fun, and then you sort of like, wow, you're not an art director, you're a senior art director. It's like, oh, okay. A little bit more money, a lot more work, a lot more stress. You go, you're not a senior art director, you're like a creative director. It's like, okay, so you're making less and less work and just stressing out more and going to more meetings, presenting more of other people's work, to the point where it's like, I quit. I hated it. It was just so meaningless in spite of the money and stuff. Just what you were saying, like art, fun, money, it's just like, man, this is terrible. And sort of,
No fun.
yeah, no fun. And they're like opting to go to the bottom of the ladder or start over or try to reinvent. So my career is a corn maze, my career path. And there's been two pretty fun and interesting exceptions, and both of those came very serendipitously. One is Plasm magazine, which has been here in town. While I was working in advertising here, a friend says, oh, you should do a layout for this magazine. Plasm's a magazine that's been around forever, or almost forever. Josh Berger started it, and I'm now principal with him at Plasm. But a friend of mine said, oh, you should do a layout, it's really fun. So I was like, okay, so I did a layout, and then I did another layout, another one, and it's been an ongoing collaborative process for well over 20 years now. It's Josh and I and a couple other people that he and I are the principals, and it's been the most rewarding thing. It's something that I never sought out. It's just something that's like, oh, you should talk to so-and-so. And it was just that little ricochet thing that sort of turned into this beautiful friendship. He and I are like brothers, and it's been amazing. The other, and I kind of have a little show and tell thing, I guess. Not much, very little, literally. The other thing that I brought along, just I wasn't sure if it was even visible, but started as a hobby. I mean, the reason I'll tell this briefly, is that it starts as a hobby. It really has nothing to do with being a profession. And this is similar to Kate. This is a little piece of ephemera that I brought from my childhood. This is a stamp album that I made. You can look at it later or whatever, but it's using like, they're not even real stamps. They're like from the Sierra Club or something. They're like ducks and puffins and things like that. So I made this little stamp album when I was a kid. And then, you get a little bit older, you discover, girls and boys and beer and things like that. You set the stamp album down, you move on to other things. And that's great. And so as a designer, I was always just attracted to bits of paper and ephemera and type and all that good stuff. And so, occasionally I would dabble and whatever. I was teaching in New York, and I saw a stamp in a faculty show that I was participating in by another faculty member, and I recognized it because I had it in my collection because it was just a beautiful piece of typography. I know it's totally retarded, but it's like, yeah, okay, this is beautiful. So it's like, wow. So I sought her out, I talked to her, she had done a couple of other stamps, and we got to talking, and I was like, oh, I gotta get all of her stamps now, since we're like this. So I went to a local club and a stamp show and started getting like, oh yeah, I remember this used to be really fun. So I started getting back into it. Bought all of Hava, her name is Hava Benemo, she's a beautiful woman, bought all of her stamps, which amounted to like 50 cents, it was like nothing. And started building my collection up and getting really passionate about it just as a hobby. But then in the process of hunting out Hava's stamps, somebody who was selling them says, oh, you're interested in, you like stamps? And I was like, yeah. He's like, do you like design? I was like, yeah. So he's like, all right, well, do you want to design a stamp? I was like, yeah. And so he kind of introduced me to some people, and I started working for him. Before he did, he goes, you won't get rich. And he was right about that. But I have had the opportunity to design a few, and so it's gone from being just like an odd hobby as a youth into something that's sort of become fully realized now as an adult, and very strange. And then to sort of just finish that loop, I started using them in collage, just cutting them up and just doing other things with them and posting them online just for like my two friends. All right, 3. I'll give you the website address. Somebody saw them and called me and says, hey, I really like these. I want to make a postcard with some of the images. Is that cool? And I was like, yeah. He goes, it's typical for an artist. I can't pay you, but you'll have like 50 postcards and a friend. And I was like, okay. deal. So then nothing happens, and then he calls me back a while later. He goes, I think I want to make it into a book. And I was like, okay. So then I got like 50 books and a friend. And so it turned into, it came out earlier this year, it's called Philatelic Atrocities, and he just made this beautiful book for me. And so it sort of went from being just a bizarre little geeky hobby into like a work thing, and then into like a full-blown kind of passion, which I'm actually going to talk about here in a couple weeks. So that's it for me here.
Cool.
Get you all set up. Just a lot of moving back and forth.
You're doing a good
I
job
only have
tonight.
like 7 slides. So, has everybody had a beer before I talk? I think everybody should have a beer before I talk.
It's a 1 drink
Because I'm
minimum.
nervous. So my name is Dee Williams. I work. I have a couple of different jobs. The one that I want to focus on tonight is that's so nice. I love Portland. Is a company called Portland Alternative Dwellings, and what we do at PAD, get it? Portland Alternative PAD, is we help people design and build their own little house. And this was born out of something I did 10 years ago, which was to design and build my own little house. I had a background in architectural engineering, some schooling in that. I shouldn't say background, it's more like a shady background. I had some schooling in that, and decided to design and build my own little house. And through that process, since you guys are all creatives, right? We're all creatives, whether we're designing beautiful art, or we're writers, or we're problem solvers. Whatever we are creatives. And so a friend of mine recently walked through these stages of the creative process. And right at the very top, you start out with this very eager outlook on what's going to happen. And it's like, this is awesome. I'm on fire. I'm going to make something. I'm going to solve, for me, a lot of my problems are like, I'm going to pick up a 60-pound sheet of plywood by myself with my puny arms, or whatever the problem is you're going to solve. This is awesome. And then, you reach over to pick it up, or you actually start working with your media, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, this is tricky. There's something involved here that I don't know. This is tricky business, which as you continue to struggle and throw yourself at your art, or at your writing, or at your problem solving, it becomes, this is shit. This is horrible. What was I thinking? Why did I do this? I didn't know that I was misinformed. I don't know anything. And which goes from like, this project sucks to like, I suck. It's a very quick slide into, this sucks to I suck. And then as you continue to throw yourself at it, and for me, as I was building this little house over 3 months, gluing my hair to the house, one day I, was burning my legs, chopping a piece of metal with a rotary saw, and, it's just sparks flying everywhere, and I'm like, I need a paper bag to stand in to protect my legs. And then that lit on fire. Bad problem solving. But the thing is that after a while, you go from, this sucks to I suck to, I can figure this out. I think this is workable to, this is awesome. It's this continuous process. And you come out of that continuous process. I don't think you can create anything or come up with a brilliant solution to any problem and not feel like a little bit of a champion, and not feel like you're walking in your shoes just a little bit differently. But that doesn't mean it's easy, and you come out on the other side and your shoes feel different, So go ahead. So going from building my own little house, I had such a great time with it, forgetting all of the, like almost falling off the ladder. You talk about, climbing up a ladder, you didn't know where you were going. It was like me climbing up a ladder in flip-flops and, carrying a skylight and hoping that, everything would turn out okay. And it did, but, there's this process of, being monumentally fearful And somehow that's all erased when you're successful. So I built my own little house. Then I went on to help my brother design and build his little house, and then the chicken coop that went with it. And you can see there's a theme. It's all gable roofed, pretty simple structures, and that was actually really inspiring for me. Even though they're all really similar, gable roof, simple little structure. A lot of times, like my house, other people's houses I've helped design, they're less than 200 square feet, but it's a complete joy every time because they're all different. Even if they're, kind of, share a simple form. And then ultimately, I've had the joy of, seeing other people struggle to make their own tiny house, do their own designs. And this is a design that came up through Katie Anderson, who was working with Portland Alternative Dwellings at the time. Beautiful Vardo. I mean, the woodworking in this thing, it's like a boat. It's unbelievable. And for all of my skill that I thought I had, all of a sudden I got to see something truly beautiful. And it's been my honor to watch other people take an idea and launch it far further than I ever could have. And it's just a rectangle on wheels, right? So it's not like there was a genesis. I was inspired by others. It's like, as designers, we're all constantly building off of each other. It's synergistic. And I think that's the gravy that we love, And so, Katie's design, go ahead. Yeah,
I'm
sorry.
Ding. I need the sound.
Yeah. There's a local company here in town called Shelterwise that's one of our pad partners. And watching Darren go on to build and design little tiny houses that aren't just beautiful, truly beautiful, and Katie is now doing a lot of the finish work for those. It's like not only beautiful, but energy efficient. So he's taken his unique skill and craft and applied it to this tiny little structure, which is really cool. Ding! Or seeing my neighbor in Olympia, Washington, Abel, start to design his own little tiny houses. He's a boat builder. So of course his houses are going to look like this. Not a single straight surface in the entire building. Everything is curved, and it's beautiful. And I'm absolutely certain that with all three of those folks, just like me, there's a moment of feeling absolutely exuberant. Like, this is awesome, to, oh, every surface is curved. That's tricky. That's a tricky thing right there. To, God, this is shit. What was I thinking? To not just, is that shit, but I am shit. What was I doing? To, wait a minute, I think I got it. To, God, this is awesome. It's this repetitive process that we all feed on, just like we do that synergistic creative process. And then, so coming out of that design, I'm an early designer. I'm not like a lot of you who probably spent a lot of time learning about design, learning about how to be a creative. I feel like I've backed into it a little bit more. But in the last 10 years, as I've had this opportunity to play around with designing tiny houses and helping other people design and build tiny houses, it's helped me see that we're constantly looking at that hierarchy of amazement, struggle, deep, dark, storm, to cycling back out of it. And so the thing I wanted to leave is that right now, in the last month or so, I've been helping my friend Annie as she's been diagnosed with cancer. And again, I'm faced with this same sort of iterative process daily, where I think I got it. Annie wants a cold wash rag on her forehead. I got it. This is amazing. This is cool. I'm available. I'm here. I can do this. Then I apply the cold compress, and she doesn't want that. But it's like, well, this is tricky because you just said you did want it, but now you don't want it. So should I hold it and wait for you to want it again, or should I put it away? It's complicated, And then ultimately, I go ahead and I put it back on her forehead, and she looks at me like I've just slapped her in the face. And then it's like, this process sucks. There's no instruction manual. I don't know how to take care of my very dear friend through this I don't know how to be. I don't know what to offer. I don't know how to problem solve. This sucks. I suck. I should know better. I should know how to do this. Somehow, we should have this all figured out, I can take the wash rag off her forehead, and I can rest for a minute. I can wait. I can figure this out. This is awesome. I'm right here. I'm available. I can help. And so for me, as we were given this challenge, this opportunity to try to articulate how we've grown over the years in our design and our ability to be kind of productive, creative, awesome individuals like all of you, I have to say humbly, I don't know if I have your wherewithal. I don't know if I have your skill set. I feel like I'm fumbling around all thumbs most of the time, whether I'm doing a design for a tiny house or I'm trying to help orchestrate a workshop to teach other people. There's a little bit of faltering, but always, 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 I feel like I come back to leaning into the not knowing is okay. Mm-hmm. And it always comes back to this is okay, right? So that's what I got to say.
So before I do my canned questions, if anybody has a question that they'd like to ask, feel free. Okay, I'll take that as nope. And just real quick, I want to encourage you guys to speak forward into the mics too, just because they're kind of sensitive and they'll feedback if you're not, if I turn it up too much. Yeah, all right.
Cool. This is for anybody. Just as a creative, I'm wondering, how do you experience working with other people? Because for me, sometimes in that creative space, it's really important to have my own space. And bringing people into that process is tricky. So, take it from there, please.
Want to repeat the question back?
Sure, I guess I can start. The idea is, how do you work with other people?
Or do you find that easy, or is there a way that you find is important, or sort of like a process for working with people, or versus carving out your own space?
Yeah, I guess I can start. I think I've probably, I've been doing this for decades, you have to understand. So I've done lots of different hats, I've worn lots of different hats, as I said, but I think as I go on, I think I look more and more towards collaborating as a process. With Plasm, I was fortunate enough to get involved early with Plasm, and the whole thing is cooperative. Early on, everything was submission-based, and we would, all of us, read everything that was submitted, figure out what we were going to publish, and then take individual pieces of it and hand it off to other designers. So the whole concept was really one artist interpreting another artist's work, whether it was a poem, a piece of fiction, photography. How that thing appeared on the page was the result of just by our set of rules. You were talking about rule-based things earlier. By our set of rules was you were interpreting another, so automatically you're collaborating. So that's sort of been an undercurrent of some of my work for a long time, but I feel for you, like as a designer, you want to own it, but I think in all of the commercial practices, at least, you don't really own it because you're doing it for somebody else. So I agree with the problem solving and trying to work hard and rigor and the things that you were talking about, but it's at the behest of somebody else in a way. So that too is a collaborative process, even though you tend to want to own it. At this point in my career, I seek out collaboration more than anything else. I mean, paying work would be nice too, but I really enjoy the whole collaborative process. I mean, as I mentioned Josh earlier in Plasm, we collaborate on everything. I mean, we're like, it's like a mind meld. I just like do a thing and he goes, yeah, like, we very terse emails and things, and it just sort of, it's a very fun experience for me. But
Can I interject?
yeah, please.
So I just have to say, I think creating design for myself is easy. I go mad when I have to work with a client. They want there was a woman that wanted this giant, a little tiny house. Okay, we're talking something the size of a tool shed. Okay, tiny little ceiling, and she wanted to put this giant mural of a lady wearing a burqa on the ceiling. You know, it was the only wall big enough, and it was just like every morning she was going to wake up and stare at that one eye staring out from the burqa, and I was just like, I didn't even know how to begin to talk with her about that, you know, and she was just in the way of good decision making. And so as a designer, I struggle with having an opportunity to include other people's ideas when I have such strong feelings about what's right and wrong and good and bad, which makes me probably a limited designer. Because I don't like to design crap, and which says a lot about me and less about the people that I'm working with. It says a lot about me and my arrogance and possibly my, you know, over-the-top sense of righteousness or something. Also, I need a lot of space. I just finished writing a book last year, a memoir, and I had worked on this stupid thing for a couple of years, and it was going nowhere. And I finally broke down and asked a dear friend of mine to help me do the editing. And it took off, and I was able to get a publisher, and you know, the book is out, and I feel really proud of the work, but it was absolutely brought into life because I let go of my sensibility, if that makes any sense. So.
With me, I kind of focus between two minds, the artist and the critic, and I shift gears very regularly. If it's in the design phase, dirty, messy, horrible, crap, whatever, then the critic guy pops in and says bad, good, whatever, change gears. It's also for so that's at a high level. For collaboration stuff, it boils down to, there was a book I've read, Getting Things Done. If I can do it in 5 minutes, I try and do it right then and there, but usually most of the stuff is fairly intensive, long-term stuff. I'm usually doing a quality check, like, am I the best person out of everybody here to do it? Am I gonna get it done the fastest, the best? Am I going to get stuck? If I do get stuck, can I call in somebody else that's going to do a better job? Can I have them offload the painful and difficult things that are kind of roadblocks for me? One of the earliest lessons I had when I was playing in bands and worked through this large album, and you had your favorites, the drummer had his favorites, bass player had his favorites, and then there's the song that everybody fucking hates. Everybody hates. You put it down on record, you just get it done because you need 10 songs, and you put the CD out and people hear it, and that is the favorite song of everybody else. So that was the lesson I realized, you know, even if the critic says this is shit, but it's still good quality work, you know, aesthetically, design-wise, whatever, it does, it's wrong color, whatever, but it's still good. It still passes the sniff test of, is this good work? Maybe it's not your taste, but is it good work? You never know, it might just be that song that ends up being everybody's favorite, so.
I am supportive and also bossy, and so, but I try, well, I mean, I like to get things done, and so, and whenever I feel like, especially either it's like collaborating on events or it's collaborating with clients, like I feel like the key point to successful collaboration is making sure that everybody knows what their role is and what it is that they're responsible for, and then being supportive in what it is that they're going to be doing and making sure that everybody's communicating. And some of the most successful collaborations that I've had have been with people that our roles don't really overlap, but we're all working towards one very clear goal. And I feel like that's really effective. But again, it's making sure that everybody knows what it is that they're doing, and then making sure that everybody's on the same page, and then all like getting excited and working towards that one very clear goal. But sometimes those things aren't defined, and so then I just kind of like, this is what we're doing, this is what you're doing, this is what you're doing, this is gonna be awesome, let's get it done. And so that's kind of where the supportive bossiness comes from. But I'm also I work as an illustrator. I used to work as a designer, and an illustrator and a designer are two very different things, because as far as like you said, you hate working with clients or just frustrating working with clients, like that was a frustrating point for me as a designer. But then as an illustrator, it's a different thing in that they're coming for me to do this specific thing. Again, like the roles are very much more clear and more defined, and the communication, again, it's just we all are working towards this one very similar goal, and that makes for pretty successful collaboration too. So.
All right. We've got another question.
It's kind of in reference to both UD and Unico. I tend to see things, I think, a little bit more from your point of view when it comes to designing and collaborating. And I do some training in my life, and I work with other people, and I think I'm a little bit, I don't know what word I'd use, maybe myopic or something with how I view things. And I think, well, that's dumb. This is the right way to do it. And I get blindsided, you know? I'm like, okay, well, you could do it that way, but then we'd just be doing it the wrong way. You know, I get into like cycle. And it's limiting, and I find that I'm wrong, and then I get more frustrated because I was so sure, you know what I mean? But when you were talking about how you got where you've gotten now, and kind of reached a certain level of fulfillment, and you talked about how you kind of worked up a chain and came to a point in your life where a lot of people were dependent on you, and you had to work with a lot of people, and you've all done that too. You've been teachers and stuff, and then you came to this realization that, you know what, I really want to work on my own stuff and be more creative and kind of scale down, and this sucks. I think a lot of people don't get to see that because they never get to that point, you know? Like myself, I limit myself sometimes. I think a lot of people do, and I'm wondering, like, if you have any advice, or any of you have any advice about, like, so I ended up here, and I used to be up here, and I hated it, but then everybody who started here and has never gotten here thinks this is awesome, and they'll never, you know what I mean? So they'll never actually be able to see this awesome part of the hobby from above, you know, and why it's awesome. And if you guys have some insight and some perspective on why that is so cool, you know, coming from people that have actually been experts in their field, that maybe we all haven't been had that definition. Does that make sense?
I think so, sure. I don't know if you wanted to
Go
start.
for it.
Nico's the
I've
designated
never felt
first
like an
answerer.
expert at anything. No, yeah. Imposter
I don't know if I
syndrome.
would use the word expert either. I would say that, you know, I mean, it was I guess we're talking about advertising really, but it was a measure of success that I think would be generally accepted, just sort of going up the natural sort of food chain of that career path. For me, I was curious as I did it just to see how far I could go. I studied graphic design rather, so for me, I was actually working at Wieden in the studio here, and at the time it was probably just in their 15-year history, only one other person had moved from the studio to an art director position. I was the second. And so I felt like at that time it was like a breakthrough thing, and I really wanted to see how far I could take it, and I was very, very fortunate to have some incredible mentors and just to sort of learn, and from that, as sort of the benchmark, I wanted to see how far I could go. When I moved to New York, I made a deliberate decision to try a different kind of studio. Wieden is like hot shot, boutique, whatever. It's like, I'm gonna try the opposite just because I'm curious. So I picked an agency that was a good agency, but a big one. So it's like, well, I don't know what's behind that curtain, I want to see. So I did, and then I kind of just, as I said before, sort of pursued it with, you know, rigor and passion just to see how far it could go. I mean, in hindsight, was it the best decision? I could have done other things, but I learned a lot and learned that I didn't have a taste for it any longer. But I think at steps along the way, incrementally, it's more about presence. I mean, it's not about he's going further than I am, or she's super successful, I'm not. I think it's about presence, and it's like, are you enjoying it where you are now? I mean, I think the decision for me to sort of work for myself a little bit more and just take on projects that interest me has more to do with presence and sort of work-life balance, quality of life, those kinds of things. I mean, kidding aside about hybrid practice, I think it's fulfilling and rewarding. Being an educator is super important to me. See one of my students here, which is very fulfilling, and she gets an A. So. There you go.
I would add, I guess, is that I don't think nobody goes from like what they don't want to do to what they do want to do. Like, you don't just flip a switch to do that. Like, you have to dabble in a lot of different things for that. And that's how I think you make those connections, is by dabbling in lots of little things. You're like, oh, that feels a little more right than what I'm doing now. And I didn't quit my job and start the book thing. Like, I worked until I could quit my job and start the book thing. You know, like
That was a lot smarter.
it felt a little. I had 2 kids, so it was, it was kind of important to do that.
I guess I would also add, there's a gift that comes with age. So I'm 50 now, and I feel like I'm a lot less ego-driven than I used to be. Like, I used to really, I think, crave and need a lot more and this. I don't think I'm unique, but maybe I am, and you guys are just gonna know I'm kind of shit now. But I think I really needed that sense of peer recognition, and a sense that I was accomplished in a certain way. And over the last 10 years, as I've really started to pour more of my creative energy into building little houses than problem solving in my other job, I've come to see that as much as I think I understand something, there's always going to be somebody that comes behind me that'll take whatever I have to offer and turn it into something even more beautiful and innovate it. And I thrive on that innovation now. You know, if I can be a part of a discussion with somebody who's taking anything that I had to offer and turning it into something better, then that makes me a part of it. You know, it makes it really fulfilling to see so many people right now who are interested in building tiny houses, or looking at, not necessarily tiny houses, but looking at energy efficiency and right-sizing their lifestyle, and challenging kind of the status quo in 1,000 different ways. Because I think that's our mission right now, is to challenge the status quo that tells us we need to make a lot of money and sit back and enjoy the ride. You know, we need to be active right now. So I don't know if that's being old or maybe just coming to terms with the reality of the world.
Okay, so I keep turning it off and forgetting. In the back in the pink scarf.
During your past where you got to where you are today, did you have to work through any struggles of confidence issues? And am I good at this? Or are people going to respond to what I'm working on? Can you talk a little bit about that as well?
Well, I can go first. The work that I do is very iterative. It's almost instantaneous feedback and response. I do most of my amplifiers go for sale on Facebook, and we all know Facebook is instantaneous gratification, instantaneous response. It's almost borderline market research, real time, as to what's good, what isn't, and you start getting a bunch of critical comments and things like that. You have to develop a thick skin. And be open to the fact that you will fail. You will make things that suck, and people will happily tell you you suck from behind a computer, and there's no big deal. But like was discussed about wisdom, you take it all in stride. And yeah, not everything's going to be a hit song. Not everything's going to knock it out of the park. But you take your lumps and you keep going. But you know, as long as your ideals and whatnot are going there, it's different when it's art for yourself or it's a business. Obviously, there's slightly different motivators and things like that, but I guess a business is a little bit easier because you get to wear the business guy hat, and it's like, okay, whatever, it's not me, it's not so personal. But when you kind of blend your business and your art, and it's your business, you still take it personally, but you kind of you develop a slightly thicker skin. But every now and again, somebody can get one of those little arrows right through the niche, and it kind of hurts, but you kind of walk away. But that's generally it for me.
Confidence issues, that's something that I feel like it's a nonstop struggle sometimes. And I guess my thing that I've tried to kind of cobble together over the years are like finding my people and listening to those people and trying to tune out like the negativity of people that aren't my people. And it would be definitely, it's like, and I feel like talking about my people, like I've got, friends from years ago from design school that I still just trust so deeply, where if they say something that could be taken as negative, I listen to that and we have a really good conversation about that. But if it's like something that's online, or if it's just something in my head, like my biggest enemy is probably myself. You know, I mean, I think that's for all of us, is like our biggest critic is ourselves. And it's really easy for ourselves to say, you are shit, just like what you were saying. I mean, that's exactly it. And I think that's why it's so important to have those people, so they can tell you, no, you're not shit. Keep going. And again, like finding those people are really, I don't know, they're very important. And when you find them, you don't really want to let them go either. So, yeah.
I guess something to add to that would just probably be something along the lines, as a conceptual thing, aggregate your feedback.
Yes.
There's your trusted
Yeah.
friends and advisors who aren't going to sugarcoat stuff.
Yeah.
And you take a bit of that and you take a bit of the general public and you kind of meld it together
Yeah.
into what your opinion actually is on what's going on, or
Absolutely.
how you sit with it.
Yeah, definitely.
The flip side of it, I think, too, is there's nothing more confidence inspiring than dollars showing up. Oh, I'm onto something here. Like, if you can figure out ways to kind of have little moments like that, like that's a pretty powerful validation. The other thing I would say is the world is a really, really big place, and I don't think I ever had a sense of that until I started doing this, which is like, yeah, I may not have the most popular X in Portland or even my neighborhood, but like there are people in Europe, in Czechoslovakia, in Southeast Asia that are like really into what I'm doing, and I think that's a pretty cool thing that wouldn't happen in any other time, that your ideas that may not be, most popular in the tiny world that you live in are actually can be popular in the aggregate, in the larger sense of the world, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think, as far as, listening to other people or absorbing good advice versus criticism and trying to sort through that, which is not always clear at all. Recently my big project, so I've built tiny houses and now I'm, the other day, this is like a couple weeks ago, my project was to build a composting toilet, which is essentially a box with a toilet seat on top of it. It's not complicated at all. But I got about halfway through it and I realized it wasn't coming together the right way. I should be able to do this. I mean, I'm a carpenter, maybe not a fancy finish carpenter, but country with a K, I can do that. So, I was making this toilet and it wasn't coming together the right way, and my response was to, I threw a hammer. I haven't done that. I just threw it right across the yard, and it went. And, and then I got my composure, and I realized it was actually okay. It wasn't perfect, but it was completely functional.
So it's
And the
country
people that I gave it to, they loved it. They loved it because it was imperfect. It totally looked like the sort of thing that a composting toilet should look like. So, I have this huge criticism, self-criticism, I think, as a creative is probably the biggest demon that people face. And so, yeah, if you can have those, you can have your posse to kind of prop you up when your own voices are the ones that are naysaying. And then the rest of the outside world, whether they like your country with a K toilet or not, it really doesn't matter, because you've already worked through, you've already digested the worst of that information you're going to get. And I say power to the compost
toilet. One thing about your own products and your own internal criticism, maybe is just as like a little gift to unwrap every now and again, if there's like the worst mental I suck storm ever. The pet rock.
Just putting it out there.
Yeah.
Right there.
First of all, I just like what kind of you were with the pet rock. It's like the pet rock. My question is kind of tagging on to that. I guess I'm sitting here trying to figure out the best way to phrase it. I guess it's kind of about how to find a good mentor without sounding like a giant freak. Because I often fall in love with designers or And I just am like, probably that's a little scary for most humans. I don't know.
Either that or really sexy. Both are dangerous. Dangerous.
Really charming, but yeah. So I mean, it's kind of about how to mentor, and I mean, the reason why I feel like mentors are really important, and I also find that most people don't have them, is, you know, we're all talking about like not listening to the negative, and but you know, has anybody ever fallen down and not had anybody to reach you back up? Like, what happens if it's just you? Like, I often find myself in that situation where I have a lot of friends with outside design. Like, they don't even, they're like, you do cool things, yay!
Yeah, that's not helpful either.
But I think you're also going to tell me I look pretty if I was trying to sit on my foot. So, you know, it's just like, has anybody ever, like, how do you find a mentor? I guess it's her question. Have you ever fallen down and not had support to get back up, and what do you do if that happened?
You get-
And how do you find a mentor?
Well, when you fall down, you get tired of the view. Eventually, you just hit that point where it's like, I'm in this rut. I'm effing sick of it, and I need a change. And it's almost like an allergic reaction to something that you haven't even noticed. Sometimes that can help you get out of it. Changing your environment, changing your everything, change things, pivot, whatever the heck you want to call it. You know, getting a refresh on your life, if that's going to an art gallery or a new restaurant or something, change something, and just get some, you know, try and recharge your creative battery so you've got the power to dig yourself out of that rut. But sometimes it's literally just getting sick of it, and just going, nobody's going to pull me out of this ditch but me. The other one, so on seeking a mentor, some of the best ones I've found is ask really interesting questions. Engage them, find out some of their interests. How can you dovetail what you're seeking and what they can give? And maybe it's possible to offer help. Engage them as a friend first. And you might have some amazing threads of commonality you may discover in closing that communication gap and closing that loop. They actually may need the help that you're interested in learning about. You know, maybe it's a Finnish carpenter that just needs somebody to run a router. And you would never know until you get that communication started, hopefully. So reach out, ask cool questions, and hope for the best.
Yeah, I can add a little bit to that. Trying to find a mentor, I sort of, I think Kate, I've heard you talk about this a little bit, like creating a project to get yourself out of it.
Yeah.
Which you can elaborate on, but one thing that I did was something similar, where I was curious about what other people thought, much like what we're doing here tonight, but I kind of turned the table on it and used, this is where I got into making documentary, was I sought out some of the sort of iconic people in different areas, and I had no idea why I thought I had the credentials to do this, but I did it anyway. I was working for a production company in New York, and I wrote this down on a piece of paper as like, this is what I want to do. I want to go talk to George Lois, Milton Glaser, Al Jaffe from Mad Magazine.
Oh my God.
I want to ask these people some questions. I want to know the answer. Like,
You started with like the C-list people.
yeah, exactly. I had no right talking to these
D-list,
people.
yeah.
So, well, it's actually, when I was in school, we had an assignment that was given to us by somebody who became one of my mentors, and he said, you have to do a paper on a designer. Pick a designer, write a paper. It's a long time ago. I'll tell you how long ago. I said, we left class. I was like, okay. I went to the payphone. This is a phone mounted on a wall.
Is it the one with the money?
I took the phone book out. Which is also, I flipped through the phone book and I found the designer who I was looking for. His name is Leo Leone. He's a fabulous illustrator, art director, designer, or was. I picked up the phone and called him. And he answered. He says, what do you want? I said, I'm Nico. I'm a student at Pratt, and I need to do a report on a designer. So I picked you. And he goes, oh, what do you want to know? I was like, well, where were you born? I was like, and we just sat there, and I just kept putting quarters in the shit. And I wrote the whole thing out and turned it in. I was like, here you go. Here's my report. So it was a really important lesson. So as I was saying a minute ago, I went to this production company I was working with, and it says, I want to talk to these people. So I wrote down 10 questions I wanted to know, and then I called them up and says, I'm so-and-so from so-and-so, and I want to talk to you. And Milton Glazer's like, okay. And once you have Milton Glazer and a couple others, you can pretty much call anybody and just say, well, I did it with Milton. Is it okay if I could do it with you, Seymour, or you, Paula, or you, Stefan Sagmeister, whatever. It's just like
that's so perfect too, because like I always tell my students too, I'm like, what's the worst thing that can happen? You're gonna just say no. Okay, I mean that's not a bad thing to get a no. You just try again, and I think the scary part is feeling like you are able to, like, number one, find those people, which I think is also difficult, to actually know those people that you do want to learn from, because so much of that is like figuring out, well, what is it that I want it to do? Who are these people that I want to add to kind of like my creative family tree in a way? Like, I feel like that piece of the puzzle is actually really difficult, and that takes a lot of kind of investigation into your own self. And then once you kind of identify those people, again, it's reaching out and asking. And initially that sounds really scary, but no one's gonna die. Like the worst thing that's gonna happen is that you're gonna say no, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna like try again. And more than often you're gonna get, oh hey, yeah, come on over, let's talk. And you can kind of go from there. But asking is terrifying. It's totally terrifying, because it's that whole thing like, oh, I don't know, I don't want to bother anybody. I mean, it's just kind of getting over that little scary thing. And then once, like as Nico said, once you start doing it, like, I can do this, and it becomes kind of empowering, and just kind of like steamrolls from there too. So.
I think most people that got somewhere you want to be probably had some help getting
Oh,
there.
yeah.
And so if they're nice people, which most people are, that get anywhere, they probably want to pay that backwards.
Exactly. We have at school we have a mentorship program with the underclassmen and the upperclassmen, and I always tell the underclassmen, I'm like, if you have a mentor from upper class, you have to participate and be a mentor next year too. Like, you've got to have that circle. Like, you can't just take advantage of the fact that you have this really amazing upperclassmen to kind of help mentor you along the lower class. Like, you have to give that back. And so I think you're gonna find that people that have had those experiences, they're gonna want to give that back. So
I just wanted to add that this is a recent learning, maybe an old learning, but I'm just recently getting slapped with it again. And that's, in helping Annie as she's, going through her cancer treatment, she has been my mentor in life in many ways. She and her husband both are like, I've called them my spiritual advisors. They are just such kind, good people. And I think I've put myself in a position where I've always looked up to them in a lot of ways, and now all of a sudden the tables are turned a little bit, and I need to recognize that I have drawn from this bank account for a while, and I've appreciated this amazing energy, and it's been an exchange for sure. But all of a sudden, I get to be in a position where I get to exude this amazing kindness and love and adoration and rock solid, feet on the ground, blue sky above, firm ground below. I am here. I'm not going anywhere. And I think as far as looking for a mentor goes, one of the best things you can do is start to acknowledge the mentor you are. And I don't know anything about you, but the fact that you would want a mentor tells me you are one. And I think we all have, we've all taken our licks. We wouldn't be able to kind of prop ourselves up through the day if we couldn't. So start to see yourself as being this accomplished, amazing, kind, generous person. And who isn't going to want to know that person?
Another observation too. Don't be afraid to ask.
yeah.
I mean, that's the big thing. Put it out there. Don't be afraid. Like you said, the worst thing is no or whatever.
Yeah.
But after you get out of school, you're not afraid of being teased and whatnot. And just ask honestly from the heart. And be clear about your goals and what you're after. But another thing also, in a way, if they say no, that's almost in a way one of the best things they could do for you, because you're not dealing with somebody who's not
Yeah.
interested in helping you, and they're going through the motions, or maybe not even giving you their A-list work or something like that. So then saying no, not only it cuts off a waste of two people's time, but it may also inspire you, like, screw you.
Yeah.
You know?
Wait a minute.
I'm gonna go find out how you did that kind of stuff, and then that puts you on another path of learning that is also ultimately also assists you. So.
I have a question. I was wondering, I mean, I guess it's for everyone, if you could describe like significant individual moments when it was blatantly apparent that you were doing something that didn't make sense for you, either in your career, personal, or creative paths, or all three.
I was on a conference call once at 6 o'clock in the morning,
Oh, God.
Pacific time, with a guy I didn't like, and on something I didn't want to do. And I could think of so many other things I wanted to be doing. I was like, why am I here? Like, what choice did I make? Anyway, that was my moment.
Yeah.
Conference call.
My moment, in my early 20s, I was a designer for this gift company, but then I was also their sales representative at all their trade shows everywhere across the country every other weekend. And I was doing another trade show and another very just generic trade center, and doing the whole build out and setup and doing the whole spiel of selling. And it was during the same time Monica Lewinsky had a handbag line in the late 90s.
What?
Yeah. And so we basically
Built-in humidor?
it was crazy. And so it was just another
Remember that?
kind of it was another I'm just following the Monica Lewinsky handbag circuit of the trade shows. And that was crazy. And then it was the same show where I saw store owners, there was two store owners, they punched each other to get their Beanie Baby order in on time for the fall, and I'm like, this is dumb. And so I was like, this makes no sense whatsoever. So yeah, that was my moment.
Wow. Mine was when I made $100 going to the bathroom. And I realized that I'd rather go to the bathroom than do the job that I was under contract to go do. So I found a lot of reasons to go to the bathroom, and the water cooler and everything else, and I realized I was a butt in a chair.
I think mine was it wasn't such an epiphany for me.
Good things happen in the bathroom. Sometimes.
Mine was sort of a slow build-up, and sort of a sudden, then the realization as I was sitting in an office going, I just hate this.
I chose to be here.
Yeah, it's
I
like
drove
this.
myself here. I sat in traffic
I drove
to do
myself,
this.
Yeah.
Exactly. Mine was more like that, I think, for me.
Oh, God.
I think mine was, I was teaching workshops for another company, a big national company. So these workshops were focused on, bringing do-it-yourselfers in, people who wanted to build tiny houses. And, during, so I would offer information about, HTT tension ties and earthquake, how to build a house when you're expecting a huge earthquake or, a hurricane, and how to design around those huge forces. And then, the person that would follow me up to the front of the room would talk about, and for only $3.99, you can buy yourself a set of brand new tiny house plans. And I realized I was a part of this, consumer ethic, this capitalization of something that I took very seriously. And I didn't know how to marry this, wait a minute, this is morally positive. Money is bad. And, it's like, how do you get these, it's like rock'em sock'em. So I needed to quit that job. And, I feel like I've been really lucky to restart PAD to be able to kind of ethically and reasonably operate to make a sort of a living, a really good living, and at the same time not feel like I'm selling people something. I'm inviting them into something, but not, you know, selling them the sunshine on the brim of their cap. Everything will be great if you just had a little house.
Well, that question made me wonder, are there any moments that you're particularly proud of yourself? Was there a seemingly insurmountable challenge initially that you solved in a way that you were really proud of, or a ridiculous client that you were able to handle and you were proud of yourself for doing that?
That's a good question.
I have one. When I was I still had another job, and this was kind of like my hobby, and it had all the. I'm still very enamored of this and like really protective of it, but it is a little bit different when it's your hobby, and we get a lot more. Anyway, somebody kind of, as it turned out, accidentally copied the books, and I got really, really upset about it. And it was a brewery that I really liked and really respected. And when it happened, I had a lawyer by that time, not related to that event, but I called him and he was like, you know, there's like a way that you can turn most conflicts like this into something really positive, and maybe you should think about it from that perspective and not from the like combative, like you just killed my puppy and you know. I'm like, oh, okay. And you know, 3 days later, I actually achieved a mental state where I could have that thought process. And it has turned out to be an awesome partnership with that brewery.
Nice.
It's New Belgium. It was totally accidental. They're totally the company that they profess to be in their advertisements. They're like super awesome. They have kind of like a little pot smoking area on their brewery property. It's totally legal in Colorado, so you know, I'm just throwing that out there. They're awesome though. Really, really great people. And I learned a lot from that because I think your first instinct on a lot of things like that is just to get really upset, and I think there's always a positive way to turn. Not always, but most often there's a positive outcome that can be achieved. I was proud of that.
Mine was in valve tube amplifier design work. There's a few kind of Picassos and Monets and whatever. Just as a basic example, I've actually independently had a couple of those fellows independently come and meet and talk to me and say how much they admire and like what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, why I'm doing it. The wavelength that I talk about what I'm doing absolutely resonates with them, kind of kindred spirit. And these were people that were previously I knew about, but didn't know as people. And when I did meet them, I felt very, very enmeshed, aesthetically, idealistically, all that other sort of thing. So kind of that magnetism drawing together. That was an amazing moment. Another one, as doing a business, when you make something and it sells, it's always very gratifying. Probably the most recent one I remember was putting an amp for sale and it sold within 30 seconds. So that was like, okay, this is something. This is something. And, wow. Yeah, so it's cool.
How are you going to beat that record?
That's amazing. 29.
I don't know.
I think for me it was when some of these people that I was talking about before started to say yes and take the calls and let me come talk to them. And I really didn't know what to expect, and only one person's ever said no, but that to me, similar to what you're saying, is surprising, and rewarding in retrospect.
Kind of awe-inspiring.
Well, because you're in the moment and you're kind of trying to experience something with them, and then you're trying to be outside yourself. Holy shit, it's not place.
Right. Not have the panic moment, or the fanboy moment, but still like composure and still.
I think for me, it's when I meet somebody who's built a tiny house and they've followed this kind of unique trailer to house connection, this engineering connection that to me feels really important if you're going to take something down the highway so that this little structure doesn't flip off. And when I was in North Carolina in April, I met this guy. I had never met him before, and I crawled under his house, and he did it the way I suggested. And I just felt so honored, and so happy that he was safe. because I've seen a lot of other little houses that aren't as safe, and so it's like, I just wanted to give him a hug. I wanted to curl up in his house and just like not leave.
It's so funny. It's like a teaching moment, because I'm like, I think about the stuff that is that I feel like I'm most proud of is with teaching, and again, like, I did not go into. I mean, I wanted to be a designer. I didn't think that teaching was going to be nearly as big of a have nearly as big of a role in my life as it does now, and it's the thing that I am most proud of, and I absolutely love seeing what my students do and how the wonderful careers that they're doing, and that it's amazing. It really is. Like, I think about all the stuff that I've done, and I think the thing that makes me the most proud and excited is seeing what my students end up doing, and who they grow into, and see them realize the potential that I feel like I see in them. And it's just I can't, it's like such a high. It's so great. So I mean, that's really the thing that I feel most proud about. So anyway, cheese. But it's true.
I just got an email from one of mine the other day. It's like, from two of my students. They were like, we just got into Archive magazine, and so for people, I was like, cool. It's just it's so cool that they wanted to share it. It's like so rewarding as an educator.
And I think the longer that you teach, and just get like, it's just kind of crazy the amount of students, and just I don't know. It's just I love it. It's great.
I just reconnected with my old architecture professor. This was 30 years ago, right? And I had him for 3 semesters as I was studying architectural engineering. He was my favorite professor of that short, brief college experience. And which, when we finally connected in New York, and he was so happy to see me because he didn't think I would make it. Like literally, I was wandering around on campus without shoes on, trying to have a deep ecology, deep environmental experience in the winter in Kansas. And anyway, I just wrote to him. I'm headed to Japan tomorrow to help teach a workshop building tiny houses with this tsunami relief thing. And our focus during a whole semester at the college was on Japanese architecture. So I wrote to him to thank him because I was so excited about this trip that was coming up. And it was that connection to my teacher. I mean, you talk about being a teacher, but my appreciation for good teachers is just like deep bows.
Can you share a little bit about how family, whether it's siblings, kids, partner, or parents, has informed or challenged your journey? Because you're all on stage here as individual designers, but as you mentioned, there are mentors, and there's really an entourage and an ensemble that shapes some of the decisions, whether it's critic, editor, spouse, or need to finance certain things. 2 kids.
Yeah.
There's economic realities there, and I was just curious if you could comment on how that has informed or challenged your.
I made my 8-month pregnant sister help me fill a huge PO that I couldn't do by myself. So she was like rolling posters in the middle of this crappy warehouse space. It was awesome.
I'll talk real briefly on this too. My parents, I grew up in a house where they were weavers, and so I saw my parents making a living with their own hands, and I feel like I can't express how empowering that is to just kind of grow up in an environment and to take it for granted, but to actually see, your mom and dad making a living for me and my sister to just from the things that they made with their own hands, and they were self-employed. And I know it was hard, but they didn't make it look like it was rough. I never felt like we were poor, but I know we didn't make a lot of money, but it was a really great childhood, and I feel like it was a super big permission giver for me to be like, well, yeah, I can do that. Why not? So that was huge.
I take a lot of pride in that too. Like just being, I feel like very proud of the fact that I'm showing my kids that it's possible to live a life that is sort of unconventional, but there's probably some downsides too. But there's some upsides that like I get to be there when my kids are home from school, and if somebody's sick, like I can take up that slack. And it's stressful because you write big checks for stuff, and you're like, man, should I be putting that in a college fund? Or I do that too, but yeah, it's rewarding too. Like to there's a lot of things you can't actually write checks for that I get that a lot of people don't get. So
I think for me, so I don't have a partner, I don't have kids, but I have this amazing community of people, and particularly looking at PAD and the fact that PAD exists, that's largely due to my business partner, Joan Graham, who, does all the shit work that goes with running a company, like the books. Or making sure that we actually have insurance when we need it, and making sure that if we're going to teach a workshop, we have a place to actually do it. And then my friends who continue to inspire me and prop me up. So, I mentioned my friend Katie, who made the Vardo. She actually built a little Vardo for me, my retirement home, so I can move out of my big 84 square foot house into a properly sized house, 56 square feet, for my retirement. And she gave me, I paid her, but a fraction of what she's worth. And all of that, helps me feel like I'm on the right path. I think as creatives, we absolutely need people to remind us that we're, chuck, keep going, do a great job, and to prop us up, if that makes any sense. I have many other friends that offer me that same bit of inspiration, but I wouldn't.
We do.
What?
But not like we do.
My business partner and my friend Katie. That's a really good question.
It is.
Because what's the point of doing any of this stuff if we don't have people in our life that make it worthwhile?
That's huge.
All right, we have time for one more. Yeah, you.
My question is kind of all answered in different ways, but I still kind of want to just kind of tweak it. Like you all kind of came to this point in turn. Did you have to burn what was behind you, or did you find it kept tapping you on the shoulder constantly when you made the switch? What was it like to leave your past behind you?
Oh God.
That hard one, sorry.
That's a hard question.
That's actually a very good.
That's a good one.
It's almost to a degree like a ex-wife or ex-girlfriend that was like, hey, you want to hang out again? No. Yeah, I don't care how much the contract pays. I'm cool. I got my own thing, and it's actually quite an easy decision because I just kind of sit with it for a second. Like, what would that feel like to go back to where I was before versus what I have now, and how I feel day to day. And in school you always saw the bumper sticker saying that, what is it, the best day fishing is whatever, the worst day fishing is better than the best day working. That whole mentality of like, this is, yeah, the fish aren't biting and this sucks and it's raining and I don't give a shit, but you know what, I'm kind of having the time of my life, and this is better than the best day I had back with the old girlfriend or the old relationship or whatever.
The guy with the van is right.
I know.
So you're absolutely right, and it's kind of weird how the past or whatever old monsters have ways of trying to work themselves under the cracks and still kind of like take a little nibble out of you. They're not quite done with you, but it's a very good reinforcer as well.
I found that everything informs the next thing that's gonna happen. And so like when asked like what was the worst thing, like all those like trade show experiences, like that's completely informed all of the consumption work that I've done for the last like 14 years. Like if I didn't have that experience, like the like saturated year after year experience of doing all those trade shows, like I would not be making the work that I'm doing right now. And so it's like it's just it all builds on each other, and I think it's all, again, it's all connected. And even though I did not enjoy that time, like if I didn't have that time, I wouldn't be doing the stuff I'm doing right now. So
Yeah, I would agree with you. And my ex-wife is in the audience, so, so I have a different point of view.
well, it's like it's always a reaction against, it's everything, a reaction is to a reaction, basically, and it just.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I like to malign advertising, there's still parts of it that I really enjoy,
Yeah.
and still process. I mean, I came to realize that the process is essentially
Yeah.
the same. It's how you choose to use the tool that.
For the forces of good or evil.
Exactly. I mean, I think that for me made the biggest difference. So.
And it feels a lot different to do some of those things that you hated before when you're doing them for yourself than when you're doing them for somebody else. Like, I do trade shows now, and like, are there other things I'd rather be doing than standing in a booth
But it's
for
your
8
stuff.
hours? But when it's your stuff, you get excited about talking about it. You
Of
meet
course.
people that like enjoy it. Like, it's totally different.
Yeah.
But it is hard. Like I have dabbled back in the ed world, and I miss parts of it. I think you don't have to say goodbye completely. I still do design work for other people sometimes because I like it. I don't do conference calls very often. I try to write that in the contract if I can.
This is a little bit different, but when I moved out of my 3-bedroom house into my 84 square foot house that I designed and built, and even though I was kind of slashing and burning that space, the 3 beds, the shower curtain, the toilet plunger, because it's a composting toilet now. Even though I was letting go of all of this stuff, it didn't necessarily release me from my desire for stuff. So I think even your past is your past, and I've been lucky to put myself on a permanent diet by living in something small, but that doesn't necessarily mean I love your little red dress thing. It's beautiful. I like your jean jacket. I like your beard. We all still, even when we let go of who we used to be, we are still who we are, and our past forms who we are now and who we're becoming all the time. So it's like, we can't ever really. I don't think there's no real slashing and burning. I don't think that ever really happens. If that makes any sense.
Oh yeah.
I've had 2 beers.
All right, let's have a round of applause real quick. Excellent. If you really like Nico, and I know you did, come back in 2 weeks, October 21st. Nico Cortellis of Plaza Magazine and Philatelic Atrocities is going to be here with his talk, Stamps Ate My Brain. Stamps are tiny pieces of eye candy with great stories. Nico's is a cautionary tale of a casual pursuit that's become a passionate obsession. The discussion will range from childhood stamp collecting and graphic excellence to correspondence and mail art and the absurdity of collecting turn-of-the-century perforating machines. He'll be sharing some very unusual, artful, and rare stamps. There's a lot more to these little things than you might think. It's really weird. I've never read what someone's wrote, and he wrote it in the first person, and I'm reading it as if I'm not here. I wrote it, maybe. I don't know. It's a strange experience for me.
First time for everybody.
You're doing
Yeah. Good job writing that too, Nico.
You should be a writer.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's 2 weeks from today, and I'm sure it'll be really wonderful. And just one more round of applause for our panel, because that was really fantastic. Thank you guys so much. Thanks everyone for coming and Important Design Week, and also thanks to Lindsay and Luke and Christine for making the garage clean.
Yes.
Wow. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Cool.
All right.
Okay, great.